I'm here in kind of a spooky hallway. I've got Sydney in Seattle because we're talking about ghosting on today's episode of
Ask David Bergman.
Hey everybody, welcome back. Here I am, as always, answering your photography questions. If you've got photo questions, you guys know what to do. You just go to askdavidbergman.com, submit your question right there on the site. I just might pick it to answer here on a future show. I'm back with Sydney. Thanks so much for joining me again today. We're in a studio, really great art space here in Seattle, Washington. It's Marina's studio space. She's behind the camera. Thank you so much for allowing me to use your space. I'm on tour with Luke Combs. We're playing at the stadium, so I'm here shooting videos just for you guys. And today I got a good question sent in by JJ. I swear that's his name. First name J, last name starts with J. So JJ, thanks for sending in this question, and he wants to know, in darker settings where there's little ambient light, I will use either on-camera flash or a strobe. However, I get a lot of shots where there appears to be ghosting. I thought the flash would freeze the subject, but it doesn't always seem to do so. What am I doing wrong? Jay, thanks so much for sending in that question. It's not so much that you're doing something wrong, it's just that you have to deal with the light in your environment, right? Now, when we're talking about this situation, ghosting kind of sounds funny, right? But really, what causes this, you get kind of a double image, a little bit of a double exposure. And the reason is when you shoot a picture with flash, right? I want to use flash because I want to really control the quality of the light. I have a Speedlite here and a softbox, a 2x3 foot glow softbox. I've got an egg crate grid on there. I get some really nice soft light. If I'm making a portrait of Sydney, I want to use flash. But in this particular environment, the background is very dark, right? So I need to control these two exposures. I've got an ambient exposure and I've got a flash exposure. Now, generally, I can't control the background. If you're at a wedding reception or a corporate event or something like that, you can't light up the entire place, right? I mean, you can sometimes. I know wedding photographers who will set up a whole bunch of flashes and do that. But for the most part, you're not going to do that. So you have to expose for that background first. That's how you set your ambient exposure. So in a case like this, we've got a very dark background. What I'm going to do is I'm going to slow down my shutter speed. Sometimes they call that dragging the shutter because you would just slow it down. You kind of drag it along, right? And I'm talking like it could be a quarter of a second, 2 seconds. Could be very, very long, right? But then you're going to add in the flash, and that's a separate exposure. That's really, it's two exposures that you're combining, and balancing those two exposures is kind of the trick to photography, right? So in a case like this, where the background is very dark and your subject is bright, I've chosen this area to demonstrate this purposely because we've got a window right here. The Seattle sort of, it's getting a little late in the day, but the light is coming in here and it's hitting Sydney, pretty directly, but then the background is really dark. So if I expose my camera for this background, I'm going to show you what it does. So no flash right now. I've got the Canon R5 body. I've got the 24-105 lens, it's an f4. I've got the remote strobe transmitter on the top. I'm not using that yet. That's turned off. So I've already calculated my exposure for the background here, and I'm shooting at 400 ISO at f4 at a quarter of a second. That's pretty slow. So let me just make a picture without the flash real quick. Here we go. 1, 2. Perfect. And you can see that background looks pretty good, right? And actually, she's a little overexposed because she is brighter than the background because of this window light that's coming in. And that's not uncommon in a scenario like you mentioned, Jay, where, like I said, maybe you're at a wedding and your subject is just in an area that's bright, right? And the background's really dark. So you have to kind of figure out what you're going to do there. So now when I add the flash in, because I want to affect the quality of the light, because she's already exposed, a little overexposed from that background, I'm going to get kind of a double exposure. So let's do that real quick. I'm going to turn on my transmitter here. I'm at 8th power on this flash, and let's make it real quick. I'm just going to have you move your head just very slightly while I take this picture so you can see the motion. There we go. There you go. Now you can see what's happened there. If she's moving even slightly, obviously we're exaggerating it for the photo, but if she's moving even slightly for in a quarter of a second, it's very hard to stay super still for a quarter of a second. Either the camera's going to move or she's going to move. Even if it's just her eyes, it's not going to be super duper sharp. So that's ghosting, and I think, Jay, that's the problem you're having. So now that we know what the problem is, how do we solve it? Well, there's a few different ways to do it. The first one is simply to raise your shutter speed. If you speed up your shutter speed, you're going to get it fast enough where you're going to freeze the action, freeze the motion. So if I'm at a quarter of a second and I go up to, say, 60th of a second, that's probably going to do the trick. However, it's going to bring on another problem. So let me take the picture real quick and you'll see it. Here we go. You don't have to move. 60th of a second. Boom. Whoops. Flashes on. Yep, that's exactly what I wanted. She is exposed properly. There's no ghosting. However, what does that do to my background? My background's gone. There's no ambient light back there. When I've sped up to a 60th of a second, I've killed the ambient light in the background, and that's not really the picture I want to make. That solved the ghosting problem, but creatively, that's not what I want. How do I get it so that I can see that background and freeze her? Well, there's a couple other ways. The next way really is almost impossible, but just to make a point of it, if you wanted to, if you could shoot on a tripod and have your subject not move at all, right, for a quarter of a second or however long your exposure is, it's possible, right? It's not easy, but it's possible. That would solve the problem. But any motion, even just in the edges of her hair or her eyes, you will see that if there's any kind of motion. But that definitely is one way to do it. The other way, if you can, would be, since all the light is coming from here, there's an overhead, but that's not really hitting her that much. Most of the light is coming from this window. If I could block this light, that's what I would do. If there was a curtain, I could draw that curtain. The point is to make, the job is to make the light darker on her than it is on the background. If it's darker on her, then I can control it. If it's brighter, I lose control, and then I'm going to have the ghosting issue. So if I could block this light, I would do it. I've done shoots on the beach, for example, right, in the middle of the day, and if you can build a cage, some professional photographers who do those kinds of shoots will do this. They'll build a cage around the subject, or even just use an overhead scrim just to block some of that sunlight. Then you can control that light. If your subject is darker than your background, you can control the light and not have the issue. The problem is, the challenge is when your subject is brighter than the background. So that's definitely another way to do it. If I had a curtain here, I would close that and that would solve the problem. But the last way really is to simply move, right? To find another location where maybe you can have the same background but not have your subject in this bright light. So for example, Sydney, if you just step back a couple feet here, if she just moves back right there, move this way a little bit so we can see you, there you go. You can see how much darker she is. Now I'm not going to shoot it because I'd have to move the light and move the camera and everything, but if I made the picture of her right there, it would solve all the problems. I could be at a quarter of a second. I generally have the same background, and then I can light her. You can come on back up, Sydney. Thank you. But that's what I would do. That's going to be the easiest way to solve that problem. So Jay, I hope that helps you. I think it will, and others out there who are having this issue. Again, the bottom line is you just want to make sure that your subject is darker than your background, and then you can control it, add in the flash, and do whatever you want. So that's it. That's how the show works. I appreciate you sending in that question. Remember, send in your own questions at askdavidbergman.com. I'll do my best to answer as many of them as I can. If you're not already a subscriber to the Adorama YouTube channel, go ahead and click that button down below. Use the bell icon. You'll be notified as soon as new shows come out from myself and all the other photo hosts right here on Adorama TV. Sydney? You're awesome. Thank you so much for putting up with me here in the echoey hallway. Marina, thank you for letting us use your space. And I'll be back here next time with a brand new question right here on Ask David Bergman.